How many times have you thought you were totally lined up to do something? It made sense, you could afford it, it sounded like fun, or all your friends were going to do it, and yet you were actually maybe really not in alignment to do it? This came up while I was on a Q&A call recently, and it's such a powerful place of awareness. To be able to make that subtle distinction can make or break our ability to either be in alignment or not be in alignment. And what I mean by alignment is being in alignment with what our soul, higher self, or body is actually trying to guide us to do or even not to do, because there's something more aligned for us to be doing at that particular time. I'll give you an example here. A few years ago, I was invited to go to a festival. It was a festival organizer in Mexico, and it was going to be over the December 21st equinox. There were all kinds of cosmic alignments taking place at that time. You had the equinox energy, all kinds of promises of upgrades and new light coding coming in. And I had the opportunity to offer a workshop on sacred land. We were going to be visiting the pyramids. There was also a fire ceremony that was going to take place during this whole event. And we were even going to be meeting with Indigenous elders, which is something that I was so excited about doing. So all our friends were going to be there, and everything about this was just checking one box after the other as to, things that I really was excited about and wanted to do. But if we were honest with ourselves, me and my partner in this case, underneath all that excitement was really a sense of, we could have taken it or left it. But in the moment, while we were talking with our friends about it and kind of making plans and imagining it, the mind was so excited. And it was filling our minds with thoughts of not going. What would that mean? And all of the Fomo behind that, right? The thought of not going was really this underlying fear of missing out on an adventure. What was happening was we were really being drawn to the idea of it, instead of being drawn by the feeling of it. And that was the mistake, because the inner guidance coming from our soul or divine aspects doesn't come in the way of mind or mental excitement. It comes in the way of feeling drawn to something, feeling curious about something, just feeling like we want to go in a particular direction. We get thoughts in terms of inspiration, but as far as being guided or led by those breadcrumbs, that's very different. It's not a mental thing, it's a feeling thing. And it's about following the trail of feelings, not following the trail of thoughts. And as time went on, we had to make a decision, right? We were either going to get the flights or decline the offer to participate. But as our friends would talk about it, and as we had more conversations and more group chats, we got really excited. And our minds were presenting thoughts of how we couldn't possibly, miss out on the opportunity. And that we may even be letting people down if we didn't go. I mean, that was a fleeting thought, but it came into my mind, because the people that we were originally talking with, our friends, we were starting to plan things together and plan how things were going to unfold for us as a group if we went to this particular festival. So we finally had to sit down, and I had to tune in to both mine and my partner's soul and ask about it. And asking, was it really in alignment for us to even go on this trip? And immediately, I got into a place of neutrality, so the answer came so quickly, and it was just no. But I was confused because everything sounded so good, and there was nothing standing in our way. That was the irony of it, We had the time to do it. We had the flexibility with our schedules. We had the resources to go, but our higher self simply said, it's not necessary for us to participate in that. There were things, apparently, that would happen here that would prove much more beneficial for us. And as an aside, it's interesting, there was an element of disappointment that was highly probable, meaning we were probably going to end up feeling disappointed if we did go through with it. So ultimately, we made the decision not to go. We stayed home and just basically continued with our work, continued with what we were doing at that point, and followed along with the posts that our friends were making on social as they basically went on the adventure without us. And we felt immediately good with the decision. It was kind of like we just needed permission to say no, because deep down, we really weren't feeling called. And that's what I wanted to really focus on in this today. So, looking at the pictures, looking at what was unfolding as our friends went there, the trip looked amazing. And okay, there was a tiny bit of FOMO when I saw the photos of, the fire ceremony and the temple at sunrise. But what's interesting is that the stories that we got from everyone after they returned, they echoed what our higher selves had said from day one. And at the end of the day, there was kind of a sense of disappointment that sort of lingered about the trip. Now, my higher self simply didn't feel there was any reason that we needed to have that experience. And by not giving us the feeling of really being drawn to go, that was the guidance for us not to go. And I hope that makes sense. But the mind was excited, right? Dishing out all these reasons why we should go and why it should be exciting. So I want to ask you, where have you done this in your own life? In fact, how often do we do this in all kinds of areas in our life? Even what to eat for dinner, ignoring the body that maybe is asking for something more supportive, but the mind is telling us logically we should have this or we shouldn't have that. Or even what to do on the weekend. Ignoring, perhaps, the soul trying to make other alignments to support our growth in a way that maybe could be less disruptive by allowing us to feel called to something, but we do what we think we should do or what we need to do. Or even in relationships, ignoring when the higher self, who perhaps knows we've gotten all we've needed to from a particular relationship experience, and is already orchestrating some new adventure with another playmate, and yet we stay in relationship when it's just time to move on to something new. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no, as they say. So the next time you're faced with a decision, I would encourage you to tune in from a place of neutrality and simply feel into it. And don't think into it, which is so often what we're inclined to do and really have been trained to do. Feeling from the heart is different than feeling from the mind. The mind is the realm of the ego, and it will give us excitement and replace that or try and overshadow what our heart or our soul is trying to tell us. And no good decisions ever come from the ego mind.